The security guard's hand shot up like a warning flare. "You can't be here." Those words hit me harder than the cold fluorescent lights flickering above the military wing doors. If you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to the channel now, and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. This is a story that will grip you from the first heartbeat. Lena Hayes stood frozen for a moment just outside the restricted section of Fort Liberty Medical Center. The sterile, humming corridor stretched ahead, but the path was blocked by an imposing figure, a burly security officer in tactical gear, whose glare was sharper than the cold metal barricade behind him. "I'm sorry, ma'am." His voice was flat, professional. No entry without clearance. Lena's hands clenched at her sides, her scrubs whispering softly as she shifted weight from one foot to the other. She blinked, stealing a quick breath. The air here carried a different weight. Whispers of secrets, the tension of lives hanging in balance behind those steel doors. The scent was a mix of antiseptic and adrenaline, familiar and foreign all at once. "I'm Dr. Hayes," she said quietly, steady despite the pounding in her chest. "This is an emergency." The guard's hand didn't lower. "Instructions are clear. You're not cleared for the military wing." Lena glanced down, fingers moving to the collar of her scrub top, pulling out a thin dog tag hanging from a worn chain. The metal caught the harsh light, a shimmer of history and unspeakable promises etched in cold steel. The room seemed to momentarily hush around her. Her voice dropped like a solemn oath. "This is why I belong." Behind her, the distant wail of hospital alarms built a fractured chorus. Somewhere, a soldier's life was slipping through the cracks, blinked out by bureaucratic walls and the fragile divide between a nurse and the memory of a battlefield doctor. Minutes earlier, the evening shift at Fort Liberty had settled into its careful rhythm. In the ER's suture bay, Lena worked silently, moving through a dozen minor injuries with the practiced grace of someone who had seen far worse. Her hands stitched cuts with a precision that unsettled the chief surgeon, Dr. Sue Harlan Grant, who watched from the edge of the chaos. "What is this?" Grant muttered, pointing to the interrupted horizontal mattress sutures, the kind you don't see outside trauma journals. "Why are you using this technique? You're too slow," he added sharply. "I focus on accuracy," Lena replied, voice calm but firm. "Speed is meaningless if it's at the cost of outcome." Grant's eyes narrowed, dismissive. "Stay where you belong." Across the room, Dr. Mia Reyes, a curious second-year resident, caught Lena's eye in the reflection of the glass partition. "Military field technique?" Mia whispered reverently. "My brother's an army medic." This is different." Lena didn't answer. She knew better than to explain. Her past was a delicate minefield, and every step forward risked detonating prejudice and suspicion. Then the pager buzzed. A routine consult on the third floor. A post-op patient with nausea. As Lena rose, a tremor caught her eye. The subtle, rhythmic quiver of the woman's hands was not weakness or medication. It was nerve damage, a clue the hospital missed. Lena approached the patient's bedside, her stethoscope heavy around her neck. "How long have your hands been shaking?" The woman blinked, confused. I don't know. A while." Lena's mind raced, tapping into memories of war zones and field triage. The patient's labs showed subclinical hyperthyroidism, which could trigger thyroid storm, a rare but deadly emergency, if undetected after surgery. She paged Dr. Grant urgently, her voice laced with quiet authority. "I'm on 3 with a post-op hip replacement. The patient is at risk for thyroid storm." The line went silent. Then coldly, "Thyroid storm doesn't present like that." Dismissed. But Lena already knew she was right. As she stood in the sterile corridor once more, the distant rumble of arriving ambulances split the night air. A mass casualty alert flashed across monitors. The trauma bay erupted into controlled chaos. The unmistakable call: soldiers and civilians wounded in a bombing near the base's diplomatic conference. Lena tried to step forward, only to be pulled back by voices enforcing their rules. "Stay in your lane, nurse." The tension was thick, a bitter reminder of how far she had come from the battlefield and how much farther she still had to go. But inside, the smell of burning rubber and diesel, the crunch of sand beneath boots, and the echo of distant screams called to her old instincts. She wasn't just a nurse, and this night would prove it. The trauma bay doors burst open like a thunderclap, gurneys screeching across blood-slicked tiles as paramedics shouted vitals into the chaos. Lena Hayes snapped on fresh gloves, her suture bay a dim corner amid the frenzy of Fort Liberty Medical Center's military wing lockdown. Sirens wailed outside, convoy crash victims pouring in, soldiers twisted in wreckage from the base conference bombing. Dr. Harlan Grant loomed at the center, barking orders, his white coat a stark flag in the red haze. Brennan, minor injuries only. Lacerations, fractures. Suture bay 2. Now! His eyes drilled into her, still stinging from her earlier defiance on the post-op consult. Lena's jaw tightened, but she nodded sharp, pivoting to her station. Supplies clattered. Lidocaine vials, suture kits, gauze stacks aligned with battlefield precision. No time for protest. The air thickened with copper tang and sweat, monitors shrieking as criticals rolled past. Walking wounded staggered in first. A sergeant clutching a gashed forearm, glass glittering in a diplomat's shoulder. A young private with wrist bones grinding wrong. She moved like a shadow, hands steady as granite. First patient. The sergeant mid-30s, uniform shredded, eyes wild. Hold still, Lena murmured, irrigating the wound with saline flush. Debris pinged into the basin. Concrete flecks, not shrapnel. She numbed the site, needle-piercing skin with surgical calm, then threaded nylon suture in interrupted horizontal mattress pattern, each pass inverted edges perfectly, distributing tension to prevent dehiscence. 3 minutes flat. The sergeant exhaled ragged. Damn, that's tight. Feels like it won't rip. Field grade, Lena said low, tying knots with surgeon's knots, double loops for zero slippage. She wrapped it snug, taped ends. Keep it dry, return if fever. Next, the diplomat, shoulder embedded with window shards. Lena palpated gently, tracing paths to avoid nerves. Breathe out. Tweezers extracted fragments one by one, her free hand pressing gauze to stem ooze. No arterial spray, lucky. She layered Vicryl deep, then Proline skin, everting edges for scarless heal. Mia Reyes hovered nearby, charting a sprain, but her gaze locked on Lena's work. That's not standard, Mia whispered, leaning close as Lena finished the private's wrist splint. Custom molding with SAM splint, pressure points padded against compartment syndrome. Interrupted mattress? Vertical? That's military field technique. My brother's army medic showed me pics from Kandahar. Reduces infection by 40%. Seals under blast wind. Lena didn't break rhythm, snipping excess suture. Journals say the same. Her voice flat. Eyes on the partition gap to main bay. Mia's brow furrowed. You've been here 6 months. No happy hours. Double shifts no one wants. And this? She nodded at the flawless row of stitches. Whispers rippled. Nurses glancing. A tech murmuring, ghost hands. Then it hit. A priority gurney barreled past. MPs flanking. Radio crackling. Foxtrot protocol, restricted wing. Lena froze mid-glove swap. Through the glass slit, she glimpsed it. Portable X-ray clipped to rail. Ghostly images flickering. Irregular metal clusters hugging cervical spine. Not collapsed debris. IED fragments. High-velocity scatter, inching with each pulse. C4 proximity. Migration risk screaming. Her breath hitched. Pulse thrummed in temples. Sand grit memory. Screams under diesel smoke. That pattern meant minutes before cord severance. Paralysis. Or worse. Grant strode up, spotting her stare. Eyes front, Hayes. You're a nurse. He's military jurisdiction. Locked down. Dr. Grant, Lena pressed, voice level steel. Field X-ray shows irregular metallic density at C4. Explosive origin, shifts with blood flow. 2 millimeters medial, he's quadriplegic. He needs extraction now. Grant's laugh barked cold. From a glance, through glass, stay in your lane. He waved MPs tighter on doors, buzz locking echoing. Lena's fists balled under table. Mia sidled close. She's right. I saw the image clip. Classic frag pattern. Doesn't matter. Grant vanished into main bay. Lena exhaled slow, turning to next patient. A civilian with scalp lack. Hands flew again. Clean, suture, wrap, efficient, silent. But her mind mapped the spine, calculated shift vectors. Whispers swelled, Mia to a nurse. She's done this before, a lot. 20 minutes ground by. Lena stabilized 4 more. Bay rhythm sinking under her corner efficiency. Staff stole glances, murmurs like dry leaves. Who is she? Then, faint through steel doors. A guttural groan, raw and human, clawing the air. Not pain, failing nerve. Cole's voice? The restricted patience? Lena's head snapped up. The groan trailed into monitor wail. Doors rattled, something breaking. Alarms pierced the trauma bay like shrapnel, red lights pulsing as Sergeant Nathan Cole's vitals flatlined on the restricted wing monitors. Heart rate spiking, then crashing into arrhythmia. Lena Hayes dropped her suture scissors mid-wrap, the faint groan from Part 2 now a full-throated code blue echoing through steel doors. Chaos surged, nurses scrambling, MP's radios crackling, Foxtrot lockdown, surgeon ETA 90 mics. Lena bolted from suture bay, scrubs whipping, dodging gurneys slick with blood. Dr. Mia Reyes grabbed her arm. Hayes, Grant's watching. But Lena shook free, pulse hammering. That tremor she'd glimpsed. The C4 frag migration she'd called from afar. No time. She hit the charge nurse station at restricted doors, MPs flanking like statues, hands on holsters. X-rays on the military patient, now. Irregular frag cluster at C4, shifting with systole. He's herniating. Her voice cut clean. No plea, just fact. Charts rustled. Nurse glanced at screen. No clearance, Hayes. Military jurisdiction. Clearance won't regrow his cord. Lena leaned in, eyes locked. Field X-ray showed 8mm jagged metal, 2mm from canal. Pattern screams IED, high-velocity scatter, not structural. Every beat moves it medial. Neurodeficit incoming, unilateral grip loss, ptosis. Check his left hand. Nurse hesitated, radioed inside. Captain Ellis Reed's voice barked back. 40s, crew cut, ACUs starched. Denied. Protocols hold till team arrives. Doors buzzed shut harder. Lena's breath steadied, fists unclenching. Memory flashed unbidden. Kandahar Dust, 2013. A brother's promise under firelit tent. You hold the line, Doc. She'd kept it then. No different now. She circled wide, feigning chart grab from supply cart, then slipped past MP blind spot. Shadow to partition window. Heart thudded against ribs. Inside, dim-lit bay, Cole on gurney, neck braced rigid, MPs rigid too. Military doc in fatigues hovered, vitals beeping erratic. But there, Cole's face. Older, scarred jawline from Fallujah 11. The kid she'd tubed with pen casing, chest-sucking air, whispering, "My girl's due. Gotta hold her." She'd evac him breathing. Alive. His left hand now, twitching rhythmic, thumb curling wrong. Nerve pinch. Ptosis edging his lid, migration accelerating. 30 minutes max, her brain clocked vectors, angle 22 degrees, pulse pressure shearing. Reed spotted her shadow, stormed out. You again? No access. His stance blocked light, name tape glinting. I know that patient, Lena pressed, voice low thunder. Sergeant Cole, Fallujah. I know the frag path, seen it burrow spineside in convoy hits. He's got 20 mics before quad. Reposition brace 5 degrees left, elevate head 15. Buys time. Reed's eyes narrowed. Gloved hand testing Cole's grip through glass. Weak flutter. Frown deepened. How? Civilian nurse? Experience. Lena held gaze unflinching. No more. He radioed inside, tension coiling. Cole groaned again, monitors whining drop, O2 sats dipping 88. Reed exhaled sharp. One look, no touch. Doors buzzed. Lena stepped in, air thick with betadine and fear sweat. Cole's chest rose shallow, dog tags pooled blood-matted. Up close, shrapnel tattoo faint on neck. Hers? No, fate's cruel echo. Then, Dr. Harlan Grant materialized, face thunder from main bay, coat flapping. He yanked Lena's arm, grip bruising. My office. Now. Insubordination ends tonight. She wrenched free, calm fracturing to steel. Patient first. He's crashing. Grant's voice rose, veins bulging. You're suspended. Security. Escort her. MPs shifted forward. Mia burst through fringe chaos outside, eyes wide. Cole's groan peaked into gasp. Alarms peaked. Vitals cratering. Doors rattled as Reed bellowed, Code team stat. Suspension or not, Lena's feet rooted. Cole's eyes flickered. Hers? As world narrowed to beep. Beep. Flatline whine. The flatline scream pierced the restricted wing like a blade through fog. Lena Hayes didn't wait for permission. She shoved past the MPs mid-argument with Dr. Grant, their protests drowned by the shriek of failing monitors. Captain Ellis Reed spun from Sargonmoran, Nathan Cole's gurney, barking, Code team! But Lena was already inside, gloves snapping on as Grant's shout echoed behind. Hayes, you're suspended! She ignored him. Cole's chest barely rose, neck brace rigid, his left hand curled useless, nerve compression progressing exactly as she'd warned. The military doc in fatigues fumbled with airway setup, hands competent but slow under pressure. No time. Lena stepped to the gurney head, fingers checking carotid pulse, thready, 48 BPM. Respiratory drive failing. Fragment had shifted. Atropine, 0.5 milligrams IV push, Lena commanded, voice cutting clean through chaos. A nurse hesitated, glancing at Reed. Now! Lena's tone brooked zero debate. The nurse slammed the syringe into Cole's line. Heart rate climbed, 62, 70. Breathing steadied fractionally. Reed's eyes locked on her, jaw tight. You're overriding protocol. Protocol's killing him. Lena repositioned the neck brace, tilting 5 degrees left, elevating the head of the gurney 15 degrees, exact angles to redistribute CSF pressure. Shift fragment trajectory away from cord. Her hands moved with surgical precision. No wasted motion. Get me real-time fluoroscopy. I need to see the frag now. Grant stormed through the door, face crimson. Step away from that patient. He grabbed her shoulder, yanked hard. Lena's body twisted, but her hand stayed locked on Cole's brace, immobile as stone. Touch me again, she said, voice ice cold, eyes never leaving Cole. And you explain to his daughter why he's paralyzed. Grant froze, hand dropping. Mia Reyes appeared in the doorway, breathless, clutching a portable C-arm unit. Got it. Reed nodded sharp. Set up. The fluoroscopy machine wheeled in, nurses positioning it over Cole's neck. Screen flickered. Grainy live feed of cervical spine. There. Jagged 8mm fragment, tip kissing the C4 nerve root, pulsing with arterial rhythm. Migration visible in real-time millimeter shifts toward the spinal canal. Lena's breath steadied, mind calculating vectors. Fragments riding carotid pulse wave. Systolic spikes drive it medial. We suppress pulse pressure pharmacologically. Beta blocker, esmolol drip. Buy time for extraction. She looked at Reed. Your surgical team ETA? 70 minutes. His voice clipped, professional mask cracking. He's got 20. Maybe. Lena met his stare. I can remove it. Field experience. Kandahar, Fallujah. 15 cervical frag extractions. 0 cord damage. Grant stepped forward, voice strained. You're a nurse, Hayes. This requires... I'm a surgeon. Lena's words dropped like hammer blows. Silence rippled. She reached beneath her scrub collar, pulled the thin chain, dog tag swinging free, metal catching harsh light. Not hers. Engraved, Cole Elias Kane, U.S. Army Medical Corps. Reed's face drained. Kane, the Kandahar ghost. Legendary trauma surgeon. Saved hundreds in FOB surgical tents. KIA 2013. Every military medic knew the name. Lena's voice softened, raw edge showing. He gave me this. Right before he died. Taught me everything. Observe 3 seconds, then act. 3 seconds can save 6 lives. Her eyes burned into Reed's. I made Cole a promise in Fallujah. I don't break promises. Reed stared at the tag, then Cole's trembling hand, then the fragment creeping on screen. His radio crackled. Surgical team delayed. Airspace restricted. ETA now 90 mics. He exhaled hard. Prep him. Grant sputtered. Captain, you can't authorize. My patient. My call. Reed's tone final. He turned to Lena. If you're lying, it's my career. If I don't operate, it's his life. Lena moved to the scrub sink, hands already lathering. Mia assisted, setting microforceps, retractors, suture kits, military-grade field tools. Lena's mind slipped into the zone, fluorescent lights fading to tent canvas, diesel smoke phantom in her nostrils. Cole's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. He saw her face, recognition flickering. Doc, Fallujah. His voice cracked. You told me. Lena leaned close, hand on his forehead. You held your daughter. I kept that promise, keeping it again. His eyes closed, sedation pulling him under. She straightened, gloves snapping final. Scalpel gleamed in her palm. Let's go. But as she positioned the blade, Grant's phone buzzed. He glanced, face paling. Military inquiry just flagged your name, Hayes. Classified file. What the hell did you do over there? Lena's hand didn't waver. My job. She made the first incision. The scalpel split skin like whispered truth. Clean, deliberate, no hesitation. Lena Hayes worked under the surgical lights of Fort Liberty's restricted bay, her hands moving with the precision of 1,000 field operations compressed into muscle memory. Sergeant Nathan Cole lay still beneath her, sedated, neck exposed, the jagged fragment visible on the live fluoroscopy screen pulsing with each heartbeat. Retractor, Lena said, voice steady as stone. Doctor. Mia Reyes handed it over, her own hands trembling slightly as she watched Lena part fascia and muscle with surgical efficiency. Captain Ellis Reed stood across the table, monitoring vitals, his earlier skepticism replaced by focused silence. Behind them, Dr. Grant hovered near the door, phone in hand, face tight with something between awe and dread. Lena deepened the incision, exposing the posterior cervical vertebrae, C3, C4, C5 gleaming white under blood-slicked tissue. Suction. Mia cleared the field. The fragment sat there, 8mm of twisted metal lodged against the C4 nerve root, its irregular edges intimate with the spinal canal. One wrong move, one slip, and Cole would never walk again. BP? Lena asked, not looking up. 110/68. Heart rate 76. Steady. Reed's voice clinical, but his eyes tracked every motion of her hands. Good. Keep Esmolol drip at current rate. I need systolic below 115 while I extract. Lena positioned microforceps, titanium jaws catching light. She paused. 3 seconds. Observed the fragment angle, the nerve root trajectory, the pulsation pattern. Colomer Kane's voice ghost whispered in her skull. 3 seconds can save 6 lives. Then she moved. Forceps closed around the fragment's proximal end, grip firm but controlled. She applied gentle traction, testing resistance. The metal shifted, barely a millimeter, but the monitor shrieked. Cole's left leg spasmed on the table. Vitals dropping, Reed barked. O2 sat 89, heart rate 62. Lena didn't flinch. Nerve stimulation. Expected. Hold pressure lateral to extraction site. Reed's gloved hand moved instantly, fingers compressing tissue to stabilize the nerve root. Lena adjusted her angle, pulling along the fragment's natural trajectory, parallel to the cord, not across it. Slow, steady. 2 millimeters. 3. Sweat beaded on Mia's forehead. It's moving toward the canal. No, it's rotating free. Lena's voice absolute. 4 millimeters. The fragment's edge scraped nerve. Cole's right hand twitched violently. Monitor alarms crescendoed. 5 millimeters. 6. The metal cleared bone, lifted into open space. Lena raised forceps high, fragment dripping blood under harsh light, jagged, Russian-made frag pattern, exactly as she'd diagnosed. Specimen tray. Mia slid it beneath. The fragment pinged into steel, a sound like chains breaking. Reed exhaled hard. Jesus, that was not done. Lena inspected the nerve root under magnification, checking for tears. bruised purple, swollen, but intact. Neurocheck. A nurse ran reflex tests on Cole's feet. His toes curled in response. Positive bilateral reflexes. Lena's shoulders dropped fractionally. The only sign of relief. Start closure, layer by layer. Vicryl 3 narrow for fascia. Proline 4 narrow skin. Interrupted horizontal mattress. She stripped gloves, stepped back, and for the first time in 20 minutes, allowed herself to breathe fully. Mia took over suturing, her stitches mimicking Lena's earlier technique, precise, tension distributing. Reed moved to Lena's side, voice low. Where did you learn that extraction angle? I've seen combat surgeons with 10 years miss those calls. Lena didn't answer immediately. She watched the monitor, Cole's vitals stabilizing, heart rate climbing to 82. O2 sat recovering to 96%. Kandahar. FOB surgical tent. 15 cervical extractions in 6 months. You learn fast or people die. Reed studied her face. The dog tag. Kane. You were on his team? I was his protege. Lena's voice softened, edges fraying. He taught me field surgery isn't about sterile perfection. It's about keeping promises under fire. Grant's phone buzzed, loud in the quiet bay. He glanced at the screen, face draining to ash. Military inquiry confirmed your file. Classified discharge 2013. Command blamed you for 2 KIA during unauthorized evac. Lena turned slowly, eyes meeting his. No defiance, no apology, just truth. I moved patients against orders because the area wasn't secure. We lost 2 in transit, saved 4. Command said I violated protocol. She paused. I'd do it again. Silence hung heavy. Then Cole's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, searching. His gaze found Lena. Doc, you came back. His voice cracked, raw with sedation fog. Just like Fallujah. Lena stepped to his side, hand resting on his shoulder. Told you I keep promises. His left hand lifted weakly, tremor gone, fingers curling strong around hers. My girl. She's 12 now. Because of you. Tears didn't fall. Lena wouldn't allow it. But her throat tightened. You earned that. Not me. Reed's radio crackled. Surgical team arriving. ETA 10 mics. Tell them patient's stable. Extraction complete. Reed's eyes stayed on Lena. And tell command we need to talk about Dr. Hayes. Officially. Grant pocketed his phone. This isn't over, Hayes. Lena met his stare. No, it's just beginning. Dr. Harlan Grant's office smelled like old coffee and institutional authority. Fluorescent bulbs humming overhead. Framed diplomas lining walls like sentencing documents. Lena Hayes stood across from his mahogany desk, scrub still blood-stained from Cole's surgery, hands clasped loose at her sides. Grant sat rigid, phone face up displaying a military inquiry seal, his jaw working through unspoken accusations. Sit, Grant said flatly. Lena remained standing. I have patience. You have a problem. He tapped the phone screen. Command just sent your service record. Classified discharge, 2013. Medical Evaluation Board recommended separation after you violated direct orders during a combat evac. 2 soldiers died under your care. His eyes burned cold. You lied on your residency application. I omitted. Lena's voice steady as bedrock. There's a difference. Not to me. Grant leaned forward. You endangered this hospital by hiding a discharge based on recklessness. What else are you hiding? Lena's hands tightened fractionally. The only tell. Memory flashed unbidden. Kandahar dust storm, mortar fire cratering the FOB perimeter, 4 critical patients bleeding out on stretchers. Command's radio denial. Area unsecured. Hold position. Cole. Kane's ghost voice in her ear. Sometimes protocol kills more than bullets. She'd loaded the patients, driven the convoy herself. Lost 2 to exsanguination en route. Saved 4. The board blamed her for the 2. I made a call, Lena said quietly. Saved 4 lives. Command needed someone to blame for the losses. Grant's face hardened. Or you were reckless and people died because of it. Silence hung thick. Then his desk phone buzzed. Charge nurse. Urgent tone. Doctor. Grant, post-op patient on 3, the hip replacement spiking 102.8, Tachycardic at 1:38. Dr. Reyes requesting immediate consult. Lena's head snapped up. The woman from earlier, subclinical hyperthyroidism, dismissed symptoms. Thyroid storm, she said, already moving toward the door. Grant stood fast. We're not done. She is if I don't get there now. Lena didn't wait for permission. She bolted through corridors, Grant's shouts fading behind her. Elevator too slow. She hit stairs, taking 3 at a time, heart hammering not from exertion, but from knowing she'd called this hours ago and been ignored. 3rd floor erupted in controlled chaos. Nurses clustered around room 312. Mia inside adjusting IV lines as the patient convulsed, face flushed scarlet, hands trembling violently. The woman's eyes rolled back, monitor shrieking arrhythmia warnings. Lena pushed through. Propranolol, 1 milligram IV push. Cooling blankets, ice packs to neck and groin. Dexamethasone 4 mg stat. Her commands sharp, no debate. Nurses moved instantly, muscle memory responding to authority that transcended titles. Mia met her eyes, relief flooding her face. I didn't know what I was seeing until... You do now. Lena placed the beta blocker into the line herself, then packed cooling around the woman's carotid arteries. Thyroid storm from undiagnosed Graves' disease, triggered by surgical stress. Should have been caught pre-op. Grant arrived breathless at the doorway, watching Lena work. The patient's heart rate began dropping. 132, 125, 118. Temperature plateau at 102.1, then slowly declining. Color fading from scarlet to pink. Her eyes focused, pupils contracting. What happened? Lena leaned close, voice gentle. Medical emergency. You're stable now. Just breathe. The woman's hand gripped Lena's wrist weakly. Don't leave. I'm not going anywhere. Lena stayed beside the bed, monitoring vitals every 90 seconds until the crisis passed fully. 20 minutes later, heart rate settled at 88, temp down to 100.2. Stable. Grant stepped inside, face unreadable. He checked the chart, the medication log, the trending vitals. Then he looked at Lena. You called this 6 hours ago. I dismissed you. Yes. You were right. I was wrong. The admission seemed to physically pain him. If you hadn't been here, she'd be dead. Lena's tone held no triumph, just fact. Grant exhaled hard, shoulders dropping. I owe you an apology. Lena pulled off gloves, tossed them in biohazard. You owe her one, not me. She moved past him into the hallway. Staff watched, whispers trailing like smoke. Grant followed, catching her arm gently this time. Hayes. About your service record. I need to understand what really happened in Kandahar. Lena turned, eyes meeting his without flinching. 4 critical patients. Mortar attack. Command denied evac. Said area wasn't secure. I loaded them anyway. Lost 2 to hemorrhage before we reached the hospital. Saved 4. The board called it insubordination. I call it triage. Would you do it again? Every time. Grant studied her for a long moment. Then Captain Reed appeared at the hallway intersection. Uniform crisp, face grim. Dr. Hayes, command needs to speak with you. Officially. Lena's pulse didn't spike. She'd been expecting this. When? Now. Conference room B. Reed's tone neutral, but his eyes held something else. Respect, maybe. Or warning. Grant stepped between them. She just saved a patient's life. This can wait. No, Lena said quietly. It can't. She looked at Reed. Lead the way. As they walked, Mia caught up, breathless. Lena, what's happening? The past catching up. Lena kept moving, spine straight, every step measured. Inside conference room B, 2 brass-uniformed officers sat flanked by a civilian in DoD credentials. The overhead projector displayed her service photo. Younger face, captain's bars, Colin Kane beside her in a field tent. The image froze her mid-stride. The senior officer, a colonel with graying temples, gestured to a chair. Captain Hayes. Or should I say Dr. Hayes? We need to clarify some things about your discharge. Lena sat, hands folded. I resigned before the board could discharge me. The record should reflect that. It does. What it doesn't explain is why you're practicing medicine under a civilian license when your military clearance was never revoked. Lena's breath caught. What? The colonel slid a folder across. Your discharge was administrative, not punitive. You were never stripped of medical credentials, which means... He paused. You're still technically a reserve officer, and we have questions about tonight's surgery. The room tilted. Reed stood silent in the corner, face unreadable. Outside, distant sirens wailed, another convoy inbound. The conference room air tasted like stale procedure and unspoken verdicts. Lena Hayes sat rigid across from Colonel Marcus Brennan, gray temples, combat ribbons lining his chest, flanked by a DoD civilian whose badge read, Personnel Review Board. Captain Reed stood sentinel near the door, arms crossed, face carved from stone. The overhead projector still displayed her service photo. Younger eyes, captain's bars, Colleen, Kane's ghost smile beside her in a Kandahar surgical tent. Colonel Brennan slid the folder closer. Your discharge wasn't punitive, Captain Hayes. Administrative separation under Chapter 5. Voluntary resignation pending medical evaluation board review. You quit before they could rule. Lena's throat tightened. I was told my medical credentials would be revoked, that I'd never practice again. You were told wrong. Brennan's tone clinical. The board recommended administrative separation for protocol violation, not medical incompetence. Your surgical record was spotless. 89 combat saves, 0 malpractice flags. You resigned, they accepted. Your reserve commission stayed inactive, not terminated. The room tilted. 2 years believing she'd been erased, stripped of identity. Why tell me this now? Because tonight you performed emergency cervical spine surgery on active military personnel using classified field techniques. Brennan leaned forward. Under military jurisdiction, you weren't a civilian doctor overstepping. You were a reserve officer fulfilling duty. He paused. Which means we need to discuss reactivation. Lena's hands gripped chair arms. I'm done with the military. Are you? The DoD civilian spoke. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. You wear Colin Kane's dog tag. You use SOCOM surgical protocols. You made tactical medical decisions no civilian residency teaches. She tapped the folder. You never left, Dr. Hayes. You've been running from it. Distant sirens wailed closer. Second convoy inbound. The building trembled faintly with arriving ambulances. Brennan stood. We're not asking you to deploy. We're asking you to acknowledge what you are. A military trauma surgeon working in a military treatment facility. Fort Liberty Medical serves active duty personnel. Your skills save lives we can't afford to lose. His voice softened fractionally, like Sergeant Cole. Reed's radio crackled. Mass casualty alert. Second convoy hit. IED strike near base perimeter. Estimate 8 critical, 15 urgent. All surgical staff report trauma bay. Lena rose instinctively, body moving before mind caught up. I need to... Go. Brennan nodded. But this conversation isn't over. Lena bolted through corridors, the DoD folder's implications chasing her like shrapnel. Reserve commission active? It meant oversight, command chains, the same bureaucracy that had let soldiers bleed out waiting for clearance. But it also meant legitimacy. No more sideline suture bays. No more fighting for access to patients dying behind locked doors. She hit the trauma bay as gurneys exploded through entrance. Bloodied uniforms, screaming monitors, the copper diesel stench of combat. Dr. Grant stood center, triaging with bark deficiency. Brennan! Bay 3! Multiple frag wounds, possible tension pneumo. Not Brennan. Hayes. But Lena didn't correct him. She shoved through to Bay 3 where a young lieutenant lay gasping, chest asymmetrical, trachea deviated, classic pneumothorax, no time for imaging. 14-gauge needle, second intercostal midclavicular. A nurse slapped it into her palm. Lena prepped the site, drove the needle through ribs, hiss of escaping air, chest wall equalizing. The lieutenant's O2 sat spiked from 78 to 92. Chest tube kit, Lena called. Mia appeared, handing supplies. Together they placed the tube, Lena's hands guiding, Mia's executing. Textbook. The lieutenant stabilized. Next gurney. Sergeant with abdominal evisceration, intestines exposed, shock setting in. Lena assessed. No active arterial bleed. Contained perforation. Or 2. Exploratory lap. Hang 2 units ONEG, start pressers. The team mobilized instantly. Bay 4, private with facial trauma, airway compromised. Lena intubated blind through blood. 30 seconds, tube placed, ventilator cycling. Life secured. Grant watched from the periphery, eyes tracking her movements. When the initial surge stabilized, he pulled her aside. You're not practicing like a resident. You're commanding like an attending. Lena stripped gloves, breathing hard. I'm doing my job. Your job? Grant's voice carried an edge. Or your mission. He nodded toward Reed, who'd entered the bay with Brennan and the DoD civilian. They told me. Reserve commission. That you never actually left. Lena met his stare. I didn't know. But now you do. Grant's jaw worked. Which means I need to know. Are you staying at Fort Liberty as a civilian resident, or are you here under military orders? Before Lena could answer, Cole appeared in the bay doorway. Wheelchair bound, neck brace removed, left hand gripping the armrest with full strength. His daughter beside him, 12 years old, dark hair in braids, eyes wide with cautious wonder. Dr. Hayes? Cole's voice rough but strong. My daughter wanted to meet you. The girl stepped forward, clutching a folded paper. Dad said you saved him. Twice. She held out the paper. A crayon drawing, 2 figures in scrubs, one with a stethoscope, the other in a hospital bed. Thank you for giving me my dad. Lena's throat closed. She knelt, eye level with the girl. Your dad's a fighter. He did the hard part. Cole shook his head, tears tracking his scarred face. Fallujah, you told me I'd hold her. Tonight you made sure I still can. He looked at the assembled brass, then back to Lena. Captain Reed told me they're asking you to come back. To make it official. His voice dropped. Do it. Not for them. For the next guy on that gurney who needs someone who won't quit when command says no. Brennan stepped forward. Dr. Hayes. We need your answer. Lena stood. Cole's daughter's drawing clutched in her hand. Around her, the trauma bay hummed. Lives saved. Bleeding stopped. Promises kept. She looked at Grant, who nodded slowly. At Mia, who watched with fierce pride. At Reed, whose respect she'd earned in blood and steel. Then she pulled the dog tag from beneath her scrubs, Kane's name catching light. Kolya, Kane told me once, 3 seconds can save 6 lives. She met Brennan's eyes. I'm done running. Reactivate my commission. But I practice medicine my way. Patients first, protocol second. Brennan's mouth twitched. That's insubordination. That's the deal. Lena didn't blink. Silence. Then Brennan extended his hand. Welcome back, Captain Hayes. As they shook, alarms blared again. 3rd wave inbound. Lena turned to the team. Let's move. Adrenaline blurred the hours that followed, each trauma drifting into the next. Captain Lena Hayes, her title at last reclaimed, moved through Fort Liberty's trauma bay with a purpose that fused muscle memory to conscious resolve. Around her, military and civilian staff fell into a synchronized, hectic dance, intubating, suctioning, chest tube after chest tube, echoing the tense rhythm of mass casualty protocol drilled as deeply as marrow. Yet every maneuver Lena called, every shortcut she took, was rooted in the hard-won lessons of Coley. Kane and the Joint Trauma System's battlefield playbook, now seared into both hospital SOP and her soul. Word of her reactivation spread like brushfire. Nurses whispered. A junior medic snapped an awkward salute, eyes darting between the trauma badge and the dog tag at Lena's throat. News trickled upstairs. Bay lead's not just a nurse, you know. She's SOCOM trained. Doctor. Grant watched from the board, tension softening as he tracked the before and after of every patient Lena touched. Crash vital signs steadying, complex injuries stabilized in minutes rather than hours, code blues aborted before they could crescendo. Yet while Lena sutured a young corporal's abdominal wound, a torn liver, damage controlled, triaged for the OR, she caught the wary glances of a suit in the doorway. The DoD personnel board rep. Now shadowing her, clipboard in hand. He waited until she stripped off another pair of gloves. We're tracking all outcomes tonight. Command is auditing your interventions. There'll be a formal inquiry. Military protocols don't always align with civilian standards. Lena met the gaze, eyes iron. If you want to practice battlefield medicine by textbook, people die. She nodded toward the current case. He'd have bled out if I'd waited for radiology. The rep scribbled a note. Noted. You'll need to answer for every deviation, including your call to override Dr. Grant on the mass casualty triage. Across the bay, Grant intercepted. Her deviation kept this hospital from losing a single code tonight. How about auditing that? The tension stretched, until applause broke from a cluster of nurses as news arrived. The convoy with the largest cluster of criticals was stable. Even Reed, the MP turned trauma shadow, couldn't suppress a half smile. But recognition brought scrutiny. Media vans appeared outside. Word had gotten out that a hero surgeon barred from practice was back at the helm. Lena glimpsed her name flash across a Chiron's. Doctor with classified past saves dozens at Fort Liberty. In the midst of the surgical aftermath, the DoD inquiry shifted its focus. Reed quietly delivered a list of procedures Lena had done that night, each marked by a note. Protocol deviation, field standard evidence supplied. The personnel board requested a closed-room review. Lena entered alone, flanked only by the dog tag and her case logs. Inside, she faced 3 officers and 2 JAG lawyers. Questions sliced in. You initiated DCS, damage control surgery, without attending sign-off? On what authority did you take command of the trauma bay? Can you explain why you, and not a credentialed neurosurgeon, performed the cranial decompression? Lena answered with calm clarity. Military trauma guidelines don't wait for peacetime bureaucracy. In a mass casualty scenario, we're trained to prioritize hemorrhage control and airway. My actions reflect the JTS clinical practice guidelines. Combat proven, 0 delay. She cited each critical, each deviation, to a battlefield logic, referring to the very lessons the DoD had embedded into trauma centers nationwide. Eventually, a senior officer leaned forward, his expression nuanced. In every case, your actions align with joint trauma standards, even if they push conventional legal boundaries. You understand what that means for your credentialing? Lena held his gaze. It means I walk the line because the line moves when the shooting starts. He nodded. No smile, just understanding. Outside the review, Lena found Cole, healing, sitting with Mia, who beamed like a junior officer finally allowed her place at a fire. The other staff gathered JAG updates. She set a new benchmark, trauma throughput up by 50%, no preventable deaths. Some cheered, a few wiped away tears of relief. But as Lena shed her mask and gloves, a new tension wove through the crowd. Reed approached, holding his walkie, jaw set. Anonymous call just flagged you as rogue operative. Someone's gunning for your command. Brass wants to talk again in the morning. Lena felt the weight. Legacy and limelight, enemies inside and out. She looked at Mia and Grant, both nodding support. At Cole, who clapped her shoulder and said, Whatever they say, today you did what nobody else could. A fresh page buzzed overhead. Trauma captain to the main bay. New critical arriving. Lena straightened, pocketing Kane's tag. Tomorrow's reckoning would come. For tonight, lives still needed saving. Morning light filtered cold through the Fort Liberty Medical Center's conference wing as Captain Lena Hayes sat across from a hospital board that looked like a military tribunal. Flanking the long mahogany table, Colonel Brennan, Dr. Grant, the DoD Personnel Board representative, 2 JAG attorneys, and, new face, a woman in full dress uniform, stars on her shoulders. Brigadier General Patricia Voss, Regional Health Command. The weight of hierarchy settled heavy as mortars in desert sand. Captain Hayes, General Voss began, voice sharp as scalpel steel. Your reactivation has generated significant attention, both supportive and critical. We're here to determine whether your actions last night fell within acceptable military medical protocols, or whether they constitute reckless endangerment. Lena sat spine straight, hands folded on the table. Cole. Kane's dog tag rested beneath her dress uniform, invisible, but present. Ma'am, I acted within Joint Trauma System guidelines and damage control surgery protocols. Every intervention was evidence-based. The JAG attorney slid a stack of incident reports forward. 14 protocol deviations documented, Cervical spine surgery without neurosurgery consult. Craniotomy in a field surgical bay. Overriding attending physician orders. He tapped the pages. Each one could justify suspension. Each one saved a life, Lena replied evenly. Or endangered one. The DoD rep leaned in. You operated on Sergeant Cole against explicit orders. What if you'd severed his spinal cord? I didn't. But you could have. Lena's jaw tightened. In combat medicine, could have means nothing. Results matter. Cole walks. That's the result. General Voss raised a hand, silencing the exchange. Dr. Grant, you were chief of surgery during this incident. Your assessment? Grant exhaled slowly. Conflicted shadows crossing his face. Captain Hayes defied my direct orders. She overrode hospital hierarchy. She practiced beyond her residency scope. He paused, meeting Lena's eyes. And she performed flawlessly. 0 preventable deaths in a mass casualty event. Trauma throughput increased 50%. She commanded that bay like a combat surgeon with 15 years' experience. Because that's exactly what she is. The board shifted. Voss's expression remained unreadable. Then the door opened. Captain Reed entered, followed by Sergeant Cole. Walking, neck brace gone, his daughter holding his hand. Behind them, a dozen patients from the previous night. The thyroid storm survivor in a wheelchair, the lieutenant with the chest tube, the private whose airway Lena had secured. Media cameras hovered outside the glass, lenses hungry. Cole stepped forward, standing at attention despite civilian clothes. General Voss, permission to speak. Voss nodded curtly. Granted. Captain Hayes saved my life twice. Fallujah 2011, Kandahar evacuation, and last night. His voice cracked but held firm. She told me I'd hold my daughter. She kept that promise when command protocol would have killed me. He gestured to the others. These people are alive because she didn't wait for permission. The thyroid storm patient spoke next, voice trembling. Dr. Grant dismissed my symptoms. Captain Hayes diagnosed me hours before I crashed. She came back, off duty, and stabilized me. Tears tracked her cheeks. I have 3 grandchildren. I get to see them because she refused to stay in her lane. One by one, patients testified. Clinical details, precise timelines, outcomes that spoke louder than regulations. The JAG attorney's notes grew sparse. The DoD rep's clipboard lowered. General Voss stood, silencing the room with presence alone. She walked to the window where media vans clustered, cameras pointed like artillery. This story broke nationally an hour ago. Hero surgeon barred from practice returns to save dozens. Social media is calling for your reinstatement. Congress is asking questions. She turned back. The military doesn't bow to public pressure, but it does recognize exceptional service. Lena's pulse steadied. Waiting. Voss approached the table, pulling a folder. Your classified file was reviewed by Army Medical Command. The 2013 board findings have been overturned. Your resignation is rescinded. Your service record now reflects voluntary temporary separation, honorable return. She placed the folder before Lena. You're being offered a permanent position. Trauma Surgery Director, Fort Liberty Medical Center. Full attending privileges. Military rank restored with back pay. The room held its breath. Lena opened the folder. Official letterhead. Signatures from the Surgeon General's office. Her throat tightened. What about autonomy? Command interference? You'll report to me, Voss said. And I don't interfere with surgeons who get results. But you will follow chain of command. Unless a life hangs in the balance. Then you do what needs doing. Her eyes hardened. Just be prepared to defend it afterward. Lena looked at Cole, at his daughter's drawing still folded in her pocket. At Grant, who nodded slowly. At Mia watching through the door glass with fierce pride. She thought of Kane's voice. 3 seconds can save 6 lives. She stood, accepting the folder. I accept, ma'am. On one condition. Voss raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating? I want Dr. Reyes and the trauma team trained in field protocols. If I'm building a program here, it survives beyond me. Lena met the general's stare. Legacy matters more than rank. A ghost of a smile crossed Voss's face. Agreed. You start Monday. She extended her hand. Welcome home, Captain. As they shook, media outside erupted, cameras flashing through windows. Reed opened the door and the patients applauded, staff joining from the hallway. Cole saluted, crisp, respectful. And Lena returned it, blinking back the burn behind her eyes. Grant approached last, hand outstretched. I was wrong about you, Hayes. This hospital needs what you bring. It needs what we all bring, Lena replied. Together. Outside, sirens wailed. Another convoy, another call. Lena turned toward the sound, instinct pulling her. But this time she walked toward it not as a ghost, but as exactly who she was. 3 weeks passed like a held breath finally released. Captain Lena Hayes stood in the renovated trauma simulation lab at Fort Liberty Medical Center, walls lined with high-fidelity mannequins, monitor banks flickering vital signs, the controlled chaos of training exercises humming around her. Dr. Mia Reyes knelt beside a simulated IED casualty, hands moving through the steps Lena had drilled into her. Tourniquet placement, airway stabilization, rapid hemorrhage control. Time, Lena called. Mia stepped back, breathing hard. 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Combat standard is under 5. You're getting there. Mia grinned, sweat beading her forehead. Felt like forever. Forever gets people killed. Lena's tone wasn't harsh, just truth. She turned to the assembled residents and junior attendings, 15 faces watching with the hunger of students who'd finally found a teacher who spoke their language. In mass casualty, you don't have time to think. You need muscle memory. That's why we drill until it's reflex. A hand raised. Young corpsman, barely 20. Captain Hayes, what if command contradicts your medical judgment in the field? The room went silent. Lena met his eyes, seeing herself years ago. You follow chain of command, until a life hangs in the balance. Then you make the call, and defend it after. She tapped Colcane's dog tag, now worn openly over her ACUs. 3 seconds to observe, then act. Your rank won't save you from consequences, but hesitation will guarantee them. The training session ended as General Voss entered, observing from the doorway. Lena dismissed the team, then approached. Ma'am? Voss nodded toward the simulation bay. Impressive. You've transformed this program in 3 weeks. Trauma outcomes are up 30%. Field protocol compliance is at 98%. Even Dr. Grant admits you've made him a better surgeon. He made himself better. I just gave him tools. Don't deflect credit, Captain. Leadership means owning success, too. Voss handed her a folder. Speaking of which, new assignment request. Base explosion at Ramstein. Mass casualty event, 16 critical. They're asking for a medevac surgical team. I recommended you to lead it. Lena's pulse quickened. Deployment. The word carried weight. Sand, blood, promises made under fire. When? Wheels up in 6 hours if you accept. Lena looked back at the simulation lab where Mia was coaching another resident through chest tube placement. At the trauma bay visible through corridor windows, where lives moved through crisis and recovery. At Cole's daughter's drawing, now framed on her office wall. How long? 2 weeks. Mobile surgical unit embedded with the 86th Medical Group. Voss's eyes held understanding. You've built something here, Hayes. But field medicine is where you were forged. The question is, are you ready to go back? Memory flashed. Kandahar dust, Kane's steady hands across a surgical table. The weight of decisions made in milliseconds. She'd run from that for 2 years, believing she'd failed. Now she knew better. Failure wasn't losing 2 patients while saving 4. Failure was never trying. I'm ready, Lena said, but I need Reyes on my team. She's field capable. Voss nodded. Granted. Brief your team. Depart at 1800 hours. As Voss left, Dr. C. Grant appeared, face conflicted. You're deploying. 2 weeks. Ramstein base explosion. Lena met his gaze. The program won't collapse without me. You know the protocols now. Grant exhaled slowly. I do, because you taught us. He extended his hand. Come back safe. We need you here. They shook. Respect forged through fire and humility. Lena gathered her team. Mia, 2 surgical nurses, a trauma anesthesiologist. In the briefing room, she laid out the mission parameters. 16 critical patients, limited resources, combat zone protocols. We work fast, we work smart, and we bring everyone home. Questions? Mia's hand raised. What if we face something we haven't trained for? Then we adapt. Lena's voice steady. Field medicine isn't about perfect conditions. It's about impossible choices and keeping promises anyway. 6 hours later, Lena stood on the tarmac as the C-130 engines roared to life. Cole approached, walking without a limp, his daughter beside him. Heard you're heading out. Just for a bit. He saluted, crisp, emotional. Whatever happens over there, you already proved you keep your word. That's more than rank or protocol. That's who you are. His daughter handed Lena a new drawing, a figure in flight suit, dog tag visible, standing over a gurney. Come back, the girl whispered. Lena knelt, tucking the drawing into her vest pocket beside Kane's tag. I promise. As the plane lifted, Fort Liberty shrinking below, Lena felt the dual weight of legacy and mission. Kane's voice ghosted through her thoughts. 3 seconds can save 6 lives. She'd saved dozens here. Now more waited across the ocean. Beside her, Mia stared out the window. Nervous, but determined. You ever regret leaving the field? Lena thought of the years running, hiding, believing she wasn't enough. I regret the time I spent thinking I'd failed. She looked at her team, young, skilled, trusting. But I'm done running from who I am. The plane banked east, carrying them toward new wounded, new promises. Lena closed her eyes, steadying her breathing. Ready. The Ramstein Air Base tarmac still smoldered when Captain Lena Hayes and her surgical team touched down 14 hours after wheels up from Fort Liberty. Smoke hung thick in the German twilight, the acrid smell of jet fuel and charred metal stinging her nostrils as she descended the C-130 ramp. Ahead, the mobile surgical unit, a collection of reinforced tents and modular operating bays, buzzed with controlled urgency. 16 critical patients from the base explosion awaited, and the clock had already been ticking for 6 hours. Colonel Eric Strauss, Ramstein's chief medical officer, met her at the surgical tent entrance, face lined with exhaustion and something harder, desperation. Captain Hayes. Thank God. We've stabilized what we could, but we're drowning. Blast injuries, burns, fragmentation wounds. 2 patients are borderline. One with thoracic aortic rupture, another with diffuse brain swelling. We don't have the capacity for both. Lena's pulse steadied into the rhythm she knew. Crisis mode, where hesitation meant death. Show me. Inside the tent, organized chaos reigned. German Red Cross medics worked alongside Air Force corpsmen, IV lines snaking across cots, monitors beeping discordant symphonies of failing vitals. Lena moved through the space like water finding cracks, assessing, calculating, prioritizing. Her team fanned out. Mia to the burn unit, the anesthesiologist to airway management, nurses to triage reassessment. The thoracic case lay in Bay 3. A young airman, maybe 22, chest tube draining blood too fast. Lena checked the output. 1,200 milliliters in 2 hours. Aortic tear, containable but unstable. Bay 5 held the brain injury. A staff sergeant, pupils unequal, ICP climbing despite mannitol. Both needed surgery. Both needed it now. Strauss stood at her shoulder. We can only staff 1 OR at a time. Your call. 3 seconds. Lena observed. The airman's BP trending down despite transfusions. He'd exsanguinate within the hour. The sergeant's neurosigns stable for now, elevated but not herniating. Observe, then act. Thoracic first, 45 minutes max, then we move to cranial. Lena's voice left no room for debate. Prep both ORs simultaneously. I want neuro ready the second I close chest. Strauss hesitated. If the sergeant herniates while you're in thoracic, he won't. His ICP is 22, plateau phase. We have a window. Lena met his eyes. Trust the data. 30 minutes later, Lena stood over the airman's open chest, hands deep in the thoracic cavity, isolating the torn aortic segment. Mia assisted retraction, her earlier training crystallizing under real-world pressure. Clamp, Lena said. Titanium jaws closed around healthy vessel above and below the tear. She sutured with 4 neoproline, each pass precise, reconstructing the vessel wall. Blood flow restored, clamps released, no leak. Close him. I'm moving to neuro. She stripped gloves mid-stride, snapping fresh ones as she entered, or two. The sergeant lay intubated, head secured in Mayfield pins. Lena made the craniotomy incision from memory. Scalp reflected, skull penetrated with orthopedic drill, bone flap lifted. Subdural hematoma, massive, compressing the frontal lobe. She evacuated the clot, coagulated bleeders, then placed an ICP monitor. Pressure dropped. 22 to 15 to 12. Safe range. Vital stable, the anesthesiologist reported. You called it perfectly. Lena didn't respond, just closed, layer by layer, until both patients were in recovery. Alive because she'd read the data faster than fear could paralyze her. Hours blurred. 12 more surgeries followed. Fragmentation extractions, burn debridements, vascular repairs. By dawn, all 16 criticals had been stabilized. 0 preventable deaths. Lena finally stepped outside the surgical tent, pulling off her blood-soaked gown, and breathed cold German air that tasted like victory and exhaustion. General Voss appeared via secure video link, her face filling a laptop screen propped on a supply crate. Captain Hayes, Ramstein Command reports all patients stable. Surgical outcomes exceeded projections. A pause. You've proven what I suspected. You're not just a trauma surgeon. You're a force multiplier. Lena's throat tightened. My team did the work, ma'am. You led them. There's a difference. Voss leaned closer to her camera. When you return to Fort Liberty, we're expanding your program. Full joint trauma system integration. You'll train surgical teams across the European theater. Her expression softened fractionally. Colonel Kane would be proud. The screen went dark. Lena stood alone in the pre-dawn light, Kane's dog tag cold against her chest. Around her, the surgical tent hummed with post-op care. Lives saved, promises kept. Mia emerged, exhausted but glowing. We did it. All of them. We did. Lena pulled the drawing from her pocket. Cole's daughter's sketch of a surgeon standing over a gurney. She'd promised to come back. Now she could. 2 weeks later, Lena walked back into Fort Liberty Medical Center to spontaneous applause. Staff lined the corridors, patients waving from doorways. Cole stood at the trauma bay entrance, saluting. Grant extended his hand. No words needed. General Voss waited in her office. A new set of orders on her desk. Trauma Surgery Director, European Command Integration. But more than rank or title, Lena carried something else. The certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. No longer running from failure. No longer hiding from who she'd been forged to be. In the simulation lab, new residents gathered. Lena stood before them. Kane's tag visible. Cole's daughter's drawing pinned to the wall behind her. 3 seconds, she began, her voice steady and sure. Observe, then act. 3 seconds can save 6 lives. And as she taught, hands steady and eyes clear, she knew Kane's legacy lived not in the past, but in every life she touched, every surgeon she trained, every promise she kept. The story wasn't about redemption. It was about recognition of who she'd always been beneath the doubt. A soldier, a surgeon, a keeper of promises, complete.